everybody. Welcome to the Channel 9 WCPO studios, and we are in Podcast Central. This is the Flying Pigskin for a Monday afternoon, and for October 21st, which means we are through 7 weeks of the season.
7 big weeks.
I'm joined by
football.
I'm joined by Philip Lee, veteran sports photographer here at Channel 9. He has stood on many sidelines through many games, through winning seasons, losing seasons, and everything in between. And
I'm like the old game show, win, lose, or draw. I've seen a few of those as well.
You've seen a lot of lose here this year. It is tough. The Bengals are 0-7. The town is down like it gets this way. Let's start by listening to Coach Zach Taylor following, and he knows the fans were booing, the team was losing, fans are walking out. This is what he had to say after yesterday's loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars.
You have a choice. Do you ever stand up and do the right thing and keep fighting for all the work we've put in, players, coaches, everyone in this building, or do you start quitting, and start giving less effort, start pointing fingers, start complaining about everything that's going on? And those are the only two choices we got right now. So I know a lot of guys that I'm counting on that locker room. They're going to pick the right one, and we're building this thing and find our first one.
We have seen the Bengals in this situation before. We have seen some teams continue to really pursue a winning season and get there, perhaps not a winning season, but get to a level of acceptance in this town. Then we have seen other teams, they wrapped it up and they went home, and it's been tough. I just don't know where this one goes because there's not a lot of promise out there right now, I don't think, Philip.
There doesn't seem to be, although each week Zach Taylor says this team is still together. They're still functioning as a group. Well, how long will that last? I guess that's the biggest question, until something or someone jumps off the wagon and goes off on their own and say, I've had it. And will that trickle down to everyone else?
Two things occurred to me while I was watching yesterday. 2 words, old and ordinary. Their talent is ordinary compared to the others in this league, and we know Jacksonville's pretty ordinary. They only had 2 wins coming in.
Yeah, they were 2-4 going in.
Yeah. So
nothing special.
Yeah, they weren't the world beaters that we talked about, and I just think some of the guys are getting old. Maybe Geno Atkins had a decent day, but guys are getting hurt. They're staying out longer, and
there's just not much depth. That's true. That's the way I see it up for this team. Good teams, someone goes out, they have someone that comes in, next man up. Mm-hmm. You hear that all the time. I don't know if this team, I don't think this team has it. Their depth is very shallow, to my eyes at least.
I just wondered whether he thought that coming in, whether he had that vision of this team, obviously, that he knew what he was walking into. I hope he did, because I hope this wasn't a big surprise to him. I remember him talking about in the press luncheon how McVay, the coach of the Rams, came over and he had looked at the tape of the Bengals. He goes, you got some pretty good guys over there. Well, I think they do have some pretty good guys, but either they're not available or they're not surrounded by enough other good guys.
Yeah. And gosh, how many years now have we heard the Bengals need an offensive line, a better offensive line, a better offensive line? Want me to keep going?
Yeah.
Better offensive line. And then again this year, that you can put some blame on Andy Dalton, but if you don't have time to throw, or if you don't have a line to block for Joe Mixon, then you have no game on that offensive side of the ball.
I agree with you so much on that. I mean, I think it has been a lingering problem, but I think it's no more pronounced than this year. Especially Jonah Williams didn't, of course, pan out, the number 1 pick. He's not going to play this year. Clint Bowling retires. Other guys have been hurt, and so you have a shambles. There have been other years where they have had enough depth that they could plug in a guy for a game or 2. This is not the case now. You mentioned John Jerry. Here is a guy that hasn't hardly played, but he's a starter in a lot of cases.
He was not. He did not play NFL football last year, and now this year he's back in there. He was starting left tackle yesterday, or left guard 1, but yeah, that's where they are right now with the depth on that offensive line.
Misery loves company, so you too can be part of all this misery. And so subscribe to the Flying Pigskin podcast on Apple Podcast, on Stitcher, or Google Podcast. Let's start with the defense. And, it's not giving up that many points, but it's ranked last in total opponent yards allowed, rushing attempts, yards allowed, and yards per carry allowed. And what it seems to be is, while the other team isn't getting that many points off of it, Philip, they are allowing the offensive from the other team to be on the field a lot.
A time of possession on the Bengals offense is, I don't know where it is, but it's got to be one of the lowest in the league. Mm-hmm. Therefore, your defense is on the field more often, giving up more yards, more points.
Yeah.
It's, if the offense could be on the field more, these numbers from this defense wouldn't be where they are. So
no. Bengals offense ranks last in rushing attempts, yards and yards per carry. There's a lot of reasons for that. Number one, they're not on the field that much, but when they do get on the field, it's like, I'll tell you what, Joe Mixon had a couple of runs yesterday, and the hole disappeared before it ever appeared. I mean, it was gone. The guys were on him.
Right. You look at that. I could see him from field level. He was trying to dance, hesitate, find anything that he could find an inch to get an opening. Mm-hmm. It was not there. And you could see as the game progressed, Jacksonville, they knew the Bengals are one-dimensional. We are going to make them throw the ball. How many times did they throw? 40-plus times. Yesterday, Andy Dalton had attempts of 40-plus. They knew the Bengals could not run the ball, and Mixon was just grasping for any little opening he could find, and it was not there.
Yeah, they couldn't run the ball, and then it looks like they put double coverage on Tyler Boyd a lot, on Auden Tate at times. So that's what opened up Alex Erickson. And the best drive, though, the touchdown drive, were pop, I don't know, 4 or 5 passes to Alex Erickson.
Mm-hmm. And let's go back to a couple of those guys. There were some bad passes.
Yes.
There were a lot of drops.
There were like 5 or 6 drops
yesterday that could have really made a difference somewhere along the way. You got to catch the ball. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of those drops were very catchable passes from what I could see.
Which leads us into the number one thing that will start being talked about in this town, and it's been talked about before, is Andy Dalton, his future, his present. What happens? We have a guy the Bengals drafted a year ago, Ryan Finley, and whether he gets a chance. And everybody, I've seen it happen with Ken Anderson. I saw it happen with Boomer Esiason and every other quarterback that's appeared here. If they're not having a good game, people are yelling for the backup. Mm-hmm. And they're looking mostly at that quarterback because he's not completing passes. I thought the screen that got intercepted, I mean, it was just a jailbreak coming in at Dalton, and Will Chamberlain couldn't have seen over those receivers.
Andy Dalton, while not great, he was managing the game through the first 3 quarters. And then we get in that fourth quarter where the stick of dynamite went off in his hand, apparently. 3 interceptions, the one for the, pick 6. Those are on him. Mm-hmm. At some point, those are on him. So, we're going to be hearing a lot of Dalton to the bench. Yeah. Do you really want to bring a rookie quarterback in behind that offensive line and shatter the kid's confidence from day one? Mm-hmm. I think Andy Dalton plays the rest of the season.
It's a dilemma, though, Philip, and I think your fans talk about this. You don't want to do exactly what you just said now, but do you want to find out if Ryan Finley can play? If you otherwise, do you say we have to go out and get a quarterback in round 1 next year, one of the hotshot guys we're going to pay at the top of the draft, or do we have somebody that we can groom to become a quarterback? I see what you're saying, but at the same time, does he get a fair test if he's with a bad line, with a demoralized team, and does do you put him in there? It's a tough situation to put him in. I don't know.
It is. I mean, that's something that Zach Taylor and every coach on the staff and the brass upstairs are going to have to sit down and say, where do we want to go with this? But, and Zach Taylor said after the game yesterday, we've got a lot of things to look at with each position. That basically I read that as saying, no one is safe at this point.
And they shouldn't be.
And they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
If you're not performing, let's try another guy to see if they can perform a little bit better.
Okay, you mentioned 3 interceptions in 5 attempts in that for Dalton there in the second half. And here's what Zach Taylor had to say about the criticism of Andy Dalton.
You want to point the finger at the quarterback. There's probably 6 or 7 drops, I felt like, and maybe they're not always perfect ball position, but we got to step up and make some plays too. This is one of those games where every play mattered, and everyone's got to step up and make some plays, and we just didn't do enough of that today.
Yeah, and but I totally agree with that. I mean, but he knows that, and he's almost saying the same thing each week. Auden Tate. He's had some good days, and it seems like he's becoming more of a guy they're looking at for the ball. But of course, part of it is you're either going to get Tyler Boyd or Auden Tate because A.J. Green still isn't there.
That's it. I mean, the options are very limited at this point. So I got to say that Dalton, he looked frustrated for the first time yesterday. The first time that I've seen frustration on his face after a few of the incomplete passes, a couple of the sacks he got up from, especially one there, I think it was in the fourth quarter. He got up. I think he had a few words with some of his offensive linemen there who, I don't know if they were kind words, but they, you could say, you could tell he was kind of getting on them. Maybe that's what they need, somebody to light the fire. I mean, I think professional sports teams these days aren't like they were 25, 30 years ago, where you're going to have a couple guys getting in somebody's faces. And I don't think that atmosphere exists anymore. But somewhere along the way, you've got to be able to light a fire under someone.
Yeah.
We'll see if that happens.
Well, it's interesting because that is something we've rarely seen that with Andy Dalton. I remember Boomer Esiason in 1997 when he came back here, and this program was trying to find itself again at that time, as it has repeatedly over the years. But he got sacked, and he turned around, and there was some lineman there, and he says, if he comes in another time like that, I'm just throwing this ball and I'm hitting you in the ass in front of all these people. and I mean, he was able to say that sort of thing.
Yeah. But like I was saying, I don't think that type of atmosphere exists in sports today.
Yeah, you're down on the sidelines, and I'm always interested in what you see, the body language that takes place down there, because when you're seeing it close up, you're hearing kind of whether it's grumbles, you're hearing whether it's long faces, hearing whether guys are like, oh man, this is a drag. Are you seeing a great effort, or are you thinking these guys are getting tired of this right now?
I think the effort was there. I mean, it looks like, from what I see, it looks like they're busting it on every play. Mm-hmm. They're going out there giving it the effort. Sometimes it takes, you need more than effort, because the other team is going to give a lot more effort and they're going to succeed against you. One thing I did notice yesterday towards the end of the game, Joe Mixon kind of wandered off and was just kind of standing to himself there on the sidelines late in the game there. Like he didn't want to be part of anything that was going on, and he had before the game was over, he had even unbuckled his pads and was standing there ready to get off the field. Mm-hmm. And to say the least, he was dressed and out of the locker room before the media got into the locker room.
Philip, these guys have to be seeing what's happening in other places, that guys who are just really unhappy with the path of that organization, they start to look at a career that isn't long, and they say, at some point, I want to be part of a winner, and we're not pointing to anything here that makes me think we're going to be a winner. They have been. I mean, Joe Mixon was part of a winning team at Oklahoma and knows what it's like, and he's seeing now the direction is not pointing upward right now. It's not.
And there's no indication that it's going to be for any amount of time to come, So, yeah, you like you mentioned, there's those players who I want to get traded. I want to get traded.
Yes.
I want to play for a winner. Is that what's going to be starting here? Are we going to see some of that occur over the next 8 games or into next year? Unless something drastically turns around in the offseason and they get some big time stud free agents in here. it's going to last.
It used to be that NFL owners could just sit still and say, "Okay, you be miserable over there. I don't care. You're stuck with us regardless." Now these guys make noise and they decide, I got to trade him. I got to make a move. They're going to grant their wishes to a certain extent. I mean, we saw, Carson Palmer decided to sit instead of play here. And what did Mike Brown say? Well, you could sit then.
You could sit.
Yeah.
Well, he changed his mind, though, too.
Yeah,
so.
but that's because Oakland gave him a pretty good deal, didn't they?
Oakland was, we've got some number 1 draft picks to give you. What?
And that was too hard to pass up. The other thing I think about with guys like Andy Dalton and A.J. Green, they have been in this league a long time already. And they want to be part of something that they could contend. They want to be able to play at a Super Bowl. I mean, I remember when Chris Collinsworth played, I think it was in year 2, he got into a Super Bowl. Maybe it was year 1. It was in the 1981 season. And then it was, 7 more years before they got to Super Bowl 23. And I remember him talking about it. He said, after that first year, he said, I thought this was going to happen every year, and it didn't happen every year. But he had that realization how tough it is to win, but your window of opportunity is only so long.
It is.
So when you get that chance to be in a good team, and then you start to say, oh, another season has gone by, we're in last place. Another season has gone by, we're in last place. And you don't get that opportunity. Andy Dalton has to be seeing his career fading away and not with any glimmer of hope right now.
No. Right now, the way this team is assembled, there is no glimmer of hope. And will that start weighing on his shoulders? Now, he has 1 year left on his current contract after this one. And I don't know, as we kind of talked about earlier, will they get a glimpse of this Ryan Finley kid to see if he is the guy to take over for Dalton, or what's going to happen? I mean, there's so many questions and very few answers right now for this football team.
Yeah, the thing that makes me think is that you have so many other positions that young guys have been moved into it. There was no choice. Guys have been hurt, and they have no choice but to move guys in that are untested, inexperienced. The last thing you want to do is at quarterback, but some other teams have been forced into it. I mean, you look at Gardner Minshew for the Jacksonville was.
I'd never heard of the guy.
I knew he played way out, in Washington State or something like that?
I think it was somewhere like that, yeah.
In Walla Walla or something of that sort.
Wow. I took a picture yesterday. There's a banner up in the stadium that says, fans are due day. Due day. Well, they didn't get their due yesterday. So.
No, they're not getting their due. Best news of the day was Geno Atkins. Played like Geno Atkins.
Yeah.
6 tackles and 2 sacks after being pretty much absent the week before. He was very active, and that's a good sign of the defensive line, but it's such a small part of
two sacks. I think that was the only time they touched the guy, were on those 2 sacks. It's just, and they have trouble with a running quarterback, as we clearly saw with Lamar Jackson. And, what's the guy's name? Minshew. See, I can't even think of his name.
He's mobile enough.
He was mobile enough to cause problems.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't Lamar Jackson, but he was mobile enough to get out there, keep plays alive, and get something and get yardage out of it for the Jaguars. And they had trouble containing guys who are very mobile.
He had 48 yards rushing. The Bengals as a team had only 33.
There you go. I mean, that's all there is. That's all you need to know.
And this is a quarterback that doesn't even want to run. I mean, most quarterbacks don't want to run. The Bengals flush them out. They run. They pick up yardage. They slide for 8 yards and a first down.
Unless you are the elite, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, this league is going to mobile quarterbacks.
Yep.
Dalton's runs yesterday were out of necessity, not out of, I'll take off and, go get 6 or 7 yards on this RPO or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
His runs were, God, I got to get out of here. I'm going to get crushed.
Right.
So is that something that Zach Taylor wants to look at and say, well, I want to make that change. I want to have that mobile quarterback, add that extra threat to my offense. Mm-hmm. So, well, I don't think Andy Dalton is the guy that you want to be doing that.
Yeah. One more comment from Zach Taylor. He talks about he saw exactly what we saw, whether we were in the stands or watching on television. He saw, and this was his reaction.
We've had opportunities. We haven't taken advantage of them. It shows in the stands. It shows in the streets. We got to do something to change it.
I guess the question was at that point is, what kind of changes could you make? They've made so many changes already. I mean, there have been guys shuffling in and out. You're not going to – you have only a couple of running backs to choose from. The quarterback is the obvious position. I mean, he's stuck. He's kind of really stuck. Sometimes in college, you could take that hotshot sophomore, freshman that you could say, well, maybe I could move up. Maybe Joe Dotes can make a difference. But on the Bengals, you have that roster, 46 on game day, and you only have so many guys to deal with.
I think back to after week 1 of the Seattle game. The guys were like, oh, yeah, this offense is going to get clicking. You ain't seen nothing yet. They were right. We haven't seen anything.
Yeah, we haven't seen anything.
And yesterday it was maybe it was out of necessity, but I thought the play calling was very, very
predictable.
Vanilla.
Okay.
Predictable. I tweeted during the game, I'm like, this looks very similar to what Bob Bradkowski used to run. And
wow.
It was run, pass, 3 and out. Let's punt and flip field position.
Yeah.
It was very, very predictable, and the Jags they were dead on it. So
if you could gash people with a couple of runs on a first down or a second down, then you become less predictable because you could get something out of it. But everybody's clamoring, saying, "Let's run the ball. Let's give Joe Mixon." Well, they do give Joe Mixon, but it's going nowhere.
It was going nowhere.
And I know a lot of people think there's something wrong with Joe Mixon. Like I said, I've seen this before with Corey Dillon and Rudy Johnson and some guys like that. Mm-hmm. If you don't have any daylight, you're not going to gain any yardage. You can't get your legs moving. You can't try to break a tackle.
No, you can't. I mean, and on the flip side of that, you look at Leonard Fournette, 29 attempts, 131 yards. Mm-hmm. That opens up everything on the field for everything in the offense to click. If you can run 100 yards,
he keeps you honest.
Opens up the field for everything else to work, and that's what is missing in this offense right now. If you cannot run the ball, you're one-dimensional. Beat me on the passing game, and they're not doing it.
Yeah, it's it really goes back again to the offensive line, and we talked again to the offensive coordinator, Brian Callahan, and also Zach at Media Day. And I don't know whether they were fooling us, but they seemed to feel like the offensive line gaps had been sealed, that the guys were doing the job. They were able to move Michael Jordan in there, a young guy. They were able to put Trey Hopkins, who I think probably has done a pretty good job at center, moving Billy Price around to different things, though he's probably a little unfamiliar with it. And Cordy Glenn, who knows whether he's even coming back. We haven't seen him since August 15th.
Yeah, that's how this whole week got started. Was it Wednesday or Thursday?
Yeah.
That came out that he was being suspended for a game, fined a large little chunk of money, and like you just said, Cordy Glenn, will we ever see him on the Bengals offensive line again? My assumption is no. I think he'll be traded, released, done something, but I think he's seen his last time in Cincinnati.
I think it's one of those delicate situations in the NFL right now, because when you're dealing with a concussion, you're dealing with a lot of unknowns. And the last thing you want to do is release, cut a guy or whatever, and somebody goes, well, that's because he had a concussion or something like that. Mm-hmm. Then you open yourself up to a lawsuit and do the different things that but that is the longest concussion protocol that I think we've ever seen here.
That I've ever seen.
Over 2 months, something like that. So,
I mean, Alex Erickson had one last week. He was back in 4 days.
Yeah.
So, not granted, I'm sure every concussion is different. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like you said, that was a long concussion protocol. Cordy Glenn is is or was or still in. We don't really know about that. So,
well, if the Bengals were any good, they would still be in the AFC North race because
it's
the
wide
Ravens
open.
the Ravens. They impressively won in Seattle.
They did.
They're 5-2. But the Browns are 2-4. The Steelers are 2-4. They were on a bye. So imagine that. If the Bengals had even one win, if they had won, that'd be just one game out of behind those guys.
Yeah. This would have been a great year for him to be in the mix. I mean, obviously we knew once Ben Roethlisberger went out for the Steelers at toward the beginning of the year that they wouldn't be the same. The media darlings, the Browns,
they haven't measured up.
They're not measuring up to what everyone thought they would be. And the Ravens have taken it by the horn and said, hey, we'll take the ball and run and sit atop the division with the 5-2 record. So,
okay. Next to the Andy Dalton question, Philip, is the question, can the Bengals win a game this year? Because as you look down the road, the next ones are going to be tough. And they have to go to London to play the Rams.
The Rams.
Then they come back here with the Ravens.
Then they play the Raiders. Then they've got the Browns twice and the Steelers again. Every week I was like, where is that first win coming from?
You have to think the Raiders and the Dolphins present that opportunity, but the Dolphins game is down in Miami.
Yeah. Well, the Raiders game is out in Oakland as well.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, those are both road games. So
they don't have an easy card back here, really.
No, they don't.
Because the Steelers will come here, the Ravens will come here, the Browns will come here,
right?
And probably somebody I'm not thinking about right now. But it's not going to be easy. They go to London, and you and I know that's not an easy trip.
Not at all.
I mean, you and I we're just covering it. to think about these guys have to lay on that plane for how many hours? 9 hours or something like that. Then they have to kind of stretch out their body and play. The Rams are favored by 13 points.
Yeah, they should be. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good start. I think it'll probably be more than that. So, but who knows? Maybe a change of scenery will do the Bengals good. Little,
Unfortunately, it could also do the Rams good. They're 4-3. They haven't played like the Super Bowl team they were a year ago.
They have not. They don't look the same. Gosh, I don't know. People make adjustments to what they do, and now it's time for the Rams to make adjustments to the adjustments and get back. But they looked good yesterday against the Falcons. Yeah. They looked more like the old Rams that we know from last year against the Falcons yesterday. So maybe they're starting to transition in the right direction just in time to make the Bengals go 0-8.
Yeah. Just so you know, Tanya O'Rourke is off this week, and that's why she's not with us. And her and I both last week said this was going to be the week for the Bengals to win a game. I mean, we were overcome by, hometown loyalty.
Yeah. I had predicted a win yesterday. I thought they would beat the Jaguars.
It was one of the opportunities. Let's admit it. It was one of the chances in order to get it done. Now, the Bengals, like I mentioned, they go out to London, then they have a bye week. So I got a feeling those coaches aren't going to take much time off. They're going to try to fiddle with whatever they can to figure out before the Bengals come back here. They have 2 weeks really to plan for the Ravens.
Yeah. And the biggest question is, will A.J. Green be back on the field at Paul Brown Stadium come November 10th, I think it is, when the Ravens come in here for that game?
Right.
I say he will. I think there's no need to play him in London. Obviously, that's not going to happen. You have another week off. I think it's a strong possibility that we will see him on the field against the Ravens when they return home.
Yeah, and I think what they really did with that is they decided, okay, he's not going to be back for 4 or 5 weeks. Let's just get him to the break and keep him healthy, and hopefully he could come out and help us make this run the second half of the season. But there's no run to be made.
There is no run. Or will we all get fooled and A.J. Green will be playing for another team?
Yeah. That would be very much unlike a Bengals ownership to do that. But somebody might say, now is the time we have to get what did we see yesterday or last week with Jalen Ramsey? When he was traded, They got a first-round draft pick in 2020 and 2021. So they're loading up, and
more impressively, his back injury disappeared. Will that work? If you get traded, your back injury goes away?
Yeah.
I don't know. But he looked awfully good for the Rams yesterday.
Wow.
A lot of people were commenting like, man, that's the best medicine that Jalen Ramsey could have gotten was a trade.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of things to keep track of is how the Bengals how the Bengals prepare, what they do in London, and then if there's any off-the-field activity. I hope the Cordy Glenn thing is just restricted to him, and it's not somebody else that decides to do this, because this is what the team doesn't need right now. And I do think they have a lot of good players in there. I'm not sure they have the real strong players that can keep everybody in line, but I think most of them will. They're Bengals. And for thick and thin, and a lot of them have been through some pretty good days. And
right. They've had a lot of those guys in that locker room have had success. They know what it's like to win. Now they got to buckle up and say, we can do this. We can turn around and make it somewhat a respectful season. Now let's get everybody on the train and let's get rolling.
Yeah. And
there's only one way to go.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And yesterday was down for the most part. Okay, again, this is the Flying Pigskin podcast. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Podcasts. I'm John Popovich. I've been here with Philip Lee. Tanya will rejoin us next week, and we hope that after a Sunday in London, we'll all be very happy.
Tea with the Queen?
Yes.
Anyone?
Tea with the Queen and a victory over the Rams. Not going to guarantee it, but what the heck? We might as well.
Will it be tea with the Queen or a party with Austin Powers? Which one's it going to be? Yeah, baby.
Yeah, baby. Okay. Very good. Hey, thanks, everybody, for joining us. I hope next Monday has a better result to talk about. Have a great week.
Rudy.